Out of all the cards spoiled so far, the only one that has me like really like stunned, like shocked that they're printing this into modern is Ugin's Labyrinth. What's ridiculous about this card is that it is a land. It is not a spell, which means that you cannot discard it with Grief or Thoughtseize. You cannot counterspell it. It is just going to happen. White of the Reliquary is likely going to be pretty slow and dirtily. I don't think that Wizards thinks that this card is that good, but I think that the energy cards in the set are really, really powerful. On its turn, you go turn 1, Island, Mishra's Bauble, Tamio, pass a turn. On your opponent's turn, crack Mishra's Bauble, untap, draw for a Bauble, draw for turn, attack with Tamio, play a land, sacrifice the clue, boom, Planeswalker on turn 2. It's pretty clear that Wizards wants Eldrazi to come back in a big way with the combination of the printing of Ugin's Labyrinth and a lot of Eldrazi in this set. And I think Sowing Microspawn is one of the best Eldrazi, if not just the best one we've seen. And you can +2 to make a food token, like Oko. And then the -6 lets you gain control of an opposing creature, like Oko. But this is kind of like a 2-mana Soul Herder. I think that Ral is the worst of all of the creature and the planeswalkers from the cycle. Not that Ral is bad, I just think the other 4 are really, really, really good. One of the big ideas behind Modern Horizons 3 seems to be to increase the average power level of cheap creatures. And I think that this is an idea that makes a lot of sense. It does sound really good to like evoke Grief, sack Grief to Phyrexian Tower, and then play Necrodominance and draw a lot of cards. And Kozilek's Command is what the hell is this card? Whenever another creature enters the battlefield under your control, you gain a life. Awesome. Get an energy. Awesome. For 1 mana, this card is crazy. The obvious, most powerful thing you can do with this card, I think, is to play a turn 1 Arboreal Grazer, put a land into play, sacrifice it to Flare of Cultivation, put a land into play, put another land into your hand for next turn, play that land and cast like a 1 ring on turn 2, or, you know, you got 4 mana, you'll figure it out. This card is truly, truly incredible. Just a super potent, impactful 2-for-1 for 2 mana. That I think this card will end up seeing a ton of play. It is just like one of the best like mid-range threats, I think, in the format, or I think it will become that. Time will tell. We'll see, but this card reads to me super crazy. Simply put, I think Nethergoyf is better than Tarmogoyf. Very excited for Psychic Frog. I think this card is just also kind of simply put going to be one of the best 2-mana creatures in Modern. Decks built around forks and casting a bunch of instants and sorceries, storm style decks that I know these kind of decks usually are not very good. And sideboard cards are super important to the format. It's kind of like Force of Vigor to some extent, where that card is really, really good, but it is mostly a sideboard card. And I expect this card to be very good in Modern. It's also pretty cool that this lets you look at the top 7 and then decide, do you want to sacrifice a creature or not? It's kind of like, imagine that in your Collected Company deck, you could just look at the top 6 cards of your library and then say, oh, I'm actually not going to cast it. that would definitely make Collected Company a lot better. There really isn't a Boros deck that this card can go into. It seems like a card that people have pretty normal, reasonable opinions about. It is another 0-mana counterspell. Galvanic Discharge is going to be the best 1-mana red removal spell in Modern. The way I'm looking at it, Johnny, is you get a good amount of value on the front end, and then you get on the backside what would be like maybe a 3 or 4 mana Planeswalker in Standard, like a kind of mediocre 3 or 4 mana Planeswalker. But the fact that you're getting this for like 2 mana. When talking about Nadu on stream, I feel like I've uncovered that I have a bias against 3-mana creatures. The biggest problem with Nadu probably is that Nadu is like a high quality card that pairs with lower quality cards, if that makes sense. Like we have to play Shuko. When I first read this card, for some reason I thought the land entered tapped, and 253 slides later we are done talking about the spoilers. Now we have months and months and months to really dive into. I think that this is going to be a positive impact to Modern that's going to bring a lot of new archetypes and a lot of new tools. And I think that the deck building with MH3 is just going to be so sweet. Modern Horizons 3 was, in a word, overwhelming. During spoiler season, I recorded 260 minutes, which is about 4.3 hours of content, just talking about the cards as they were coming out, what impact they might have to Modern. And this 4.3 hours was about as succinct and fast as I could talk about the cards. And for a while, I've kind of wanted to come back to this content. Look at how I was looking at those cards then versus how I'm looking at the Modern Horizons 3 cards now, 9 months later. I've tried to make this video a few times, actually. Quite frankly, it's been quite the project to tackle. Just a lot of content to get through. And what I've realized is it's not that interesting. I don't think it's that interesting to go back and look at my takes then with the clarity of hindsight and be like, I was right about this, I was wrong about that, and do that for roughly 9 hours until the video kind of ends. And I hope you enjoyed the high, low light reel of my evaluation from these videos. What I do think is interesting though, with the clarity of hindsight, is talking about what this experience was like, what it was like to try to digest Modern Horizons 3 as a set, what I did right, what I did wrong, and what I'd like to try to do going forward. I'd also like to talk about Modern Horizons sets in general and the overall health of Modern and the impact of the set on the format. Unfortunately, despite my high hopes and the hopes of a lot of Modern players, I think that the 6-ish months after the release of MH3 was the worst time in the format's history. The format started with about 2.5 months of Nadu dominating tournament Magic, the best deck in Modern's history, in my opinion. I think better than Cascade Valky, better than Hogak, better than Ayabug and Eldrazi. Deck was incredibly fast, incredibly resilient, incredibly grindy, and there were almost no good cards in the format that could interact favorably with the combo. I personally way misevaluated Nadu and how devastating it would be to the format. And it's also clear that Wizards of the Coast did as well. I feel pretty confident that there's like no chance that Wizards of the Coast playtested Shuko Nadu combo before printing this as is. I had a big bias against 3-mana creatures that you build your combo deck around. I also, I think a lot of people had this vision too, that if you were going to build a combo deck around Nadu and you were going to combine it with Shuko, the only way for you to like really deterministically win the game immediately would be have like a very low card quality deck where you're playing like a bunch of Midmites and Ornithopters to like draw into as you drew your whole library and then you Thassa's Oracled. To me, that sounded like it could maybe be contained. And I think that this was one big mistake I made during my general card evaluation that I'd like to try to rectify going forward. I made a similar mistake when evaluating Flage. I think you saw that in the highlight, low light montage. That I liked Flage. I thought Flage was pretty good, pretty powerful, but it was a Boros card. And Boros decks containing red and white, especially mid-range and controlling ones, just weren't very good in Modern. So I was like, I don't know where this card could find a home, but it's pretty good. But I should have been able to connect the dots that you could just build a Boros deck basically entirely out of MH3 cards. And, we did have that deck pretty early in our paper testing with Dingo, but I think it's what I'm trying to say with the Flage example and the Nadu example is going forward, I really need to start thinking more holistically around how these new cards will interact with the other cards that are being printed simultaneously with them. Because despite my efforts, it's just so hard for me to not think about this one piece fitting in the existing Modern format instead of the new format that will exist with the rest of the new cards. Kind of related to that card evaluation error, I think I also have a problem getting too excited about payoff cards without trying to understand what the enablers for those payoffs are. I think good examples of this are Flare of Denial and Flare of Cultivation. 2 cards, 0 mana counterspell, 0 mana accelerant. I got really excited about these. And I got so excited, I just kind of immediately put them into S tier thinking 0 mana acceleration, 0 mana counterspells. These are just such powerful things to do in Modern. Surely I'll figure it out. I'll be able to have these cards be powerful. And despite the fact that, yes, over time, I have had some solid decks playing both of these flares. These cards are really just high deck building restriction, very difficult to fit in, and there's just not a deep enough pool of enablers for these powerful payoffs in the format. So for these kind of cards going forward, I would really like to make sure I'm taking the time to really be very thorough and start deck building them a little bit ahead of time before I start to do these videos. This way I can have a more deep understanding. Is this something I really want to be exploring a lot immediately, or is this something that we're just going to have to wait because despite the payoff being high, the enablers are not there? Circling back to the health of the format discussion, after Naughty was finally banned in August of last year, Boros Energy really just took the reins on the format and never let up. And I thought that this dynamic was also similarly miserable to Nadu, where Boros Energy was a beatable deck, but you basically couldn't play any other mid-range deck besides Boros, any control deck, because Boros, once they started playing the ring, just stomped all the control strategies. You couldn't play any aggro deck because the amount of life gain Boros had was so potent, and Boros was also pretty fast, so it was also just a pretty good aggro deck as well. So for this like 3-month period, I, as someone who's just building modern decks constantly, could really only afford to build big mana and combo decks. And this was a very, very stale environment, because when you have a strategy that is just so archetype warping, like Boros Energy was, and I think this dynamic is maybe even still like understated how warping to the format it was, things get pretty stale when you're just big mana combo day in, day out. And you know, I still played Modern nonstop during Nadu. I played Modern nonstop during Hogak. I started playing Standard for about a month because of the Boros Energy meta was just so stale. And of course, I keep bringing this up. I'm kind of like a broken record, but it is an important thing to bring up that the staleness, the bad environment was not just cultivated from Modern Horizons 3 being an unbalanced and untested set. This staleness was really exacerbated by the scheduled BNR announcements, when Wizards is just allowing formats to be broken and stale for months at a time, 6 months at a time. Like, when you compare the MH3 era to the 2019-2021 era, the Fire Design era, as I like to call it, yes, in that time there were a higher quantity of disgusting cards, like Karn Lattice, Arkham's Astrolabe, Hogak, Once Upon a Time, Oko, Mystic Sanctuary, Field of the Dead, Luris, Yorion, Gigantha, also banned now, cascading into Temple's Trickery, cascading into Valky, the MDFCs from Zendikar Rising, which allowed for multiple turn 1 and turn 2 kills from Belcher and Upsal spells, which led to the banning of Simian Spirit Guide. That 2019 to 2021 era, that where nearly every single set had a card or cards that broke the modern format, it was definitely a bad time, a bad environment, but because we had emergency bannings back then, it didn't feel so hopeless when things were bad, because we felt like things would get fixed pretty quickly and we could start exploring different options. But when a format gets stale or broken, when there are scheduled BNRs, what do modern players do? They just stop playing until that scheduled BNR, which is a shame, because Modern is really, really fun. And I like when people are engaged and active. It leads to lots of fun games and lots of fun discussions. I know I'm a broken record, but I do just really think that Magic the Gathering formats are better managed under the emergency ban system instead of scheduled BNRs. I've made a couple videos on this topic, and I think I'll keep saying this until things change. It just has continued to look more and more true in my mind. We are currently in a new modern era where I think the card Underworld Breach would have already been banned if we weren't on the scheduled BNR system. I think it probably would have gone 3, 4, 5 weeks ago at this point. But because we're on the scheduled BNR system, we're just kind of waiting until March 31st for the card to get deleted. At least that's what I expect to happen. You know, Underworld Breach is one of these awfully designed, untested 2019, 2021 cards. Just a better Yawgmoth's Will, Band and Legacy, Band and Pioneer. Very hard to interact with, even with Graveyard Hate. Just one of these what were they thinking kind of cards. Certainly, it's been majorly buffed with Mox Opal, but I'm pretty interested to see what Mox Opal looks like in the format without Underworld Breach, and then kind of circling back to see if that card continues to be problematic in the format going forward. And speaking on the health of the modern format going forward, I'll say that these last 3-ish months since they unbanned Looting, Opal, Twin, Green Sun Zenith, and they banned Ring, Raptor, Gigantha, these 3-ish months have been way better than the 6 months that preceded it. It's not perfect. Modern has never been a perfect format. It's very hard to imagine it ever becoming a perfect format, but I'll say gameplay's been better. Your ability to brew and try to mess around and do different stuff has been better. I've been having a lot of fun. There has been some real actual metagame evolution from week to week, despite Breach being a problematic deck that probably needs to get banned. There's a lot of movement going on. There's a lot of taking existing decks and tweaking them for the metagame. There's a lot of being able to try new stuff and succeeding with it in the format. And this has been a breath of fresh air. In fact, over these 3 months, I think we've started to see Modern take up a new format identity. I think Modern has gone through many identity crises over the last 5, 6, 7, 8 years where it just doesn't know what it wants to be. It's not a non-rotating format, although it's never really been a non-rotating format, at least as long as I've been playing, which is about 10 years. The metagame is changing constantly with new cards coming in and just being really dominant. It's just not this non-rotating format that some players want it to be. But it's not any longer a format that's just about the Horizon cards. This is how it was for a long time. This was something people were really critical of. Modern had become a format that was just about the Horizon cards. Now we're seeing the format start to take on a new identity, which is these new unbanned, classic, iconic Modern cards, looting, Opal, Green Sun, not really Twin, coming together, and they're sort of clashing against the Horizon cards, and they're combining together in, I think, really cool and interesting ways. And I would love to see more of this dynamic. I would love to see more cards come off the Modern ban list, and this way you get a nice, interesting synthesis, a mix of the old and the new. And if this dynamic of old classic Modern cards versus new exciting Modern cards continues, if this is a good new format identity, if gameplay is fun, if the metagame is interesting and evolving, if we have a good format, then I strongly think we should never have another Modern Horizons set. It's no secret that I am Modern Horizons 2's biggest fan, probably. I loved that set. I thought that not only was the gameplay pretty good and your ability to brew and change really, really fun, like probably my favorite era ever, but also Modern Horizons 2 brought a lot of stability to a very unstable format that had pretty bad gameplay, that 2019 to 2021 era. This was another time where Modern was really struggling with an identity crisis. It was like that 2019, 2021, it was just basically unrecognizable to old Modern that people are very, very nostalgic for. And MH2 really came at the right place at the right time, and conversely, MH3 and MH1 just came in like a wrecking ball, in my opinion, and they messed up formats that were previously good. And this should go without saying. This is just all my opinion. I don't think any two Modern players really share the exact same ideas on the format's identity and exactly what you should do to the format, how you should manage the ban list, what Modern Horizons sets do you like, what don't you like. I don't think any two players exactly agree, so just sharing my thoughts on the matter, of course. But I think if Modern does have a healthy format identity of these classic unbanned cards versus the newer Horizon cards, and the synthesis and the like conflicting nature of these things, if it's a good, healthy environment, which I think it really has the potential to. These last 3 months, I've really, really enjoyed. I feel the format is healing and headed in a really healthy direction that I'm excited for. And if this is true and this continues, which hard to say, right? I don't want to see another Modern Horizons set come and mess it up. This was, again, the big overarching problem with Modern Horizons 3 was that we had a pretty good format. We had a good thing going, and MH3 just wrecked it, in my opinion. But we're currently well on our way to having another good thing going, and I just don't want to have do this again. I don't want to have to do this again. I think the Horizon sets have run their course, and I think we can manage and supplement the format in a more healthy way going forward. In fact, it seems like for the last several standard sets, Wizards has been doing a great job of supplementing the Modern format by just giving us like 10-ish interesting cards to work with. And that's I think a really ideal way to do it. Just add a handful of cards every set that are interesting, fun Modern build-arounds, potentially some new staples. Just sprinkle them in a very manageable, digestible way instead of Modern Horizons 3, which was just so overwhelming. And they've made very few mistakes in standard sets and their impact on the modern format. just evaluating through that lens, standard sets and their impact on the modern format. Up the Beanstalk was a big mistake. A mistake that was kind of understandable. Like, this is a limited uncommon that likely got tweaked last second. I kind of get it. This new Ugin looks really scary, though. I'll say that this card was. I don't understand how this new Ugin got printed as is. I guess we'll see how bad it is. But for the most part, this is how I like to see Modern supplemented going forward. I think that this is healthier. I think that this is, on our way to healing, and I have high hopes for a really good Modern format again. We're on our way. It's been a long journey since the release of Modern Horizons 3. It's been 9, almost 10 months, I think. And I think things are finally looking up. I'm been rediscovering my passion for the format, rediscovering my love for deck building, and I love this game. I love this format, and I just want it to be as good as possible. And this is my vision for how I think it can be as good as possible. And if you disagree and you have your own visions, I'd love to hear about it. And I think we've had a lot of good discussions on the topic over the years, and I really enjoy getting to share my ideas with y'all. That's all I really enjoy doing is getting to share my ideas, and I'm very lucky I get to do it every single day. Thank you for watching this far. I do have a clip I from one of these spoiler videos I did that I think is a good tool for card evaluation. I didn't exactly know where to put it in previously to this, but I think it's a good attitude to have going forward when you're specifically talking about evaluating cards. So I'm going to play that, and that'll be the end of the video, and I'll see y'all later. Thanks for watching. Bye. Ultimately, just reading them, not playtesting them, it's not going to give you a clear picture. The purpose of this tier list, the purpose of these videos have been to help you and me digest these cards, so we can start ahead of time, thinking about how we're deck building, trying to figure it out. I'm sure I'm way off about a lot of this stuff. I'm sure a lot of stuff is that I thought was great is going to underperform, and a lot of cards I didn't think was great are going to overperform. It's just kind of inevitable.